The Waterfront Advisory Committee will come to order. I am Scott Marshall. I'm the city manager. I'm also an ex officio member of this body. And I won't be sitting in this chair for long. Because one of the things that we need to do right away is we need to have a call for election of officers. But before we do that, I would like us to go around the table and have everyone introduce themselves and what capacity they're serving. All right, here with you, Bill.
Hi, I'm Bill Suter. I'm on the planning commission.
I'm Joe Oliver. I'm one of the citizens representatives.
Josh Schott, citizen representative as well.
Dan Coffey, I'm the city attorney.
David Bartholomew, attorney with Cooper and Bilbrey, doing maritime work and also Beaver County Council District 2, Ladies Island, part city.
But you're here as a representative of the county.
Of the county council, sorry.
Dave Russell, citizen representative.
Howell Beach, citizen representative.
Mike Sutton, HRB, historic review board representative.
Josh Valetti, and I'm a representative for the Beaver City Council.
And, excuse me, I'm Perry Dukes. I'm one of the alternate citizen representatives. Okay, please come and take a seat. Okay.
We got a spare right here.
There's another spot. And who is the second alternate? Okay, so we wanted to get primaries and alternates here in the initial meeting because we're going to describe what the scope of the issues are that council is going to ask you to deal with to help advise them. And then for future meetings, the alternates attendance won't be mandatory. Of course, it's a public meeting, so you're welcome to attend. But in the event that we have a primary member who can no longer serve in their capacity, that's when the alternate will be around the table and voting and making decisions. Does anyone have any questions before we get started with the order of business here? So the first thing we have on the agenda is election of officers. We're looking for a chair and a vice chair. And then once we get a chair and vice chair in place, we'll talk about, the chair will discuss with the committee any other positions that might be deemed necessary, such as secretary, or whether you would like the staff to form that function to keep up with minutes, those types of things. But again, this is your committee, so we'll let you decide those things. So that being said, do I have a motion for any nominations for chair?
I nominate Joe Oliver.
Second.
Well, it doesn't know what happened. But flattered.
Are there any other nominations for chair? Hearing none,
I'll call the question.
thank you.
At this point, we'd vote and start here.
I'm not gonna vote.
Yeah, vote.
As an alternate?
Yeah.
Sure.
Vote. You vote for yourself.
Maybe I just abstain.
In favor. Well, the attorney can't vote, so.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes. Congratulations.
Motion carries. Mr. Oliver, I'm gonna change places with you.
I was just getting comfortable.
You can leave your materials there. I'll leave mine here. How's that?
All right.
I will now turn the meeting over to you. I'm going to call for nominations for vice chair and whatever other positions this body deems necessary.
Well, having been in this position now for 30 seconds, I guess I have a privilege of opening the floor for nominations for vice chair.
Everybody jump now.
Yes, we really don't know each other that well, so throwing names out there is a little bit different, but I think you're a good choice for chair. I saw the interviews. But happy to see you sit next seat.
Thank you.
I nominate Mike Sutton.
Second. Are there any other nominations?
Dave is up from the county.
Yes.
Nominate David on the last name.
That's all right. Bartholomew.
Bartholomew.
Second that.
Are there any other nominations?
You want to say?
Let's close the nominations and take a vote. All right, you don't have that.
Let me just do a show of hands.
Show of
That might
hands.
be easier. How show of hands, you can ask for votes for Sutton and then votes for McCollum.
All in favor of the nomination of Mr. Sutton for vice chair?
Not for you, anyway.
Good shape, let's not die.
Well, that seems like a majority right there. You're gonna try for the second position.
Which one's that?
Yours.
You, I nominate you.
I think.
I think-
The first one.
Yeah, I think we're there.
All right. So the agenda suggests that there may be other positions that this committee would deem necessary. There hasn't been any discussion of those positions except a suggestion that we might need a secretary or alternately rely on city staff to provide that function. Personally, I like the alternate suggestion of having city staff provide that.
Thought you would.
All the boards and commissions do that. Because we are volunteers.
Yeah.
So
The same thing.
do you have the capacity to fill up?
Yes, sir, we can do that.
Is there a person you have in mind that? feel that-
Well, all of the meetings are recorded via video and then we can go back and the clerk can assist us.
So I'll make the recommendation that we elect a liaison secretary out of this group. They would make sure that the minutes for specifically are correct and can work with staff. So staff has questions, they have one person to go to rather than having to bodies. And that role, just so you know, I mean, I try not to throw anybody in the bus here, but on the bus, we do that on HRB and it comes in valuable, especially at voting, that we have one person that pays attention to the vote counts. If we do vote, and that way they can quantify the data that the staff puts out in the minutes and usually correct that before we get down the road and forget about it.
Is that recommendation a motion to entertain nominations or? Because if so, I'll second it.
We'll make it a motion, like, go ahead.
Yeah, I make a motion that we open up nominations for a liaison position to the staff for the purposes of minutes. And if there's a second on that one, I would nominate Josh Galletti for it.
Second.
Once again, reiterate, nominate Josh Galletti for that position.
Maybe the scope of the position could be broadened a little bit as long as. Not just my liaison, with respect to minutes, but with respect to any other communications being made. Sure.
And his capacity as a council member on this chair, on this board also requires that anyways. He's a liaison to the council from this commission. So I'm sure behind the scenes, any questions that the council members have with him, he would be updating them on what we're doing, you know, within his preview. Comfortable with that? Yes, sir.
So you're going to review the minutes after they're prepared by the staff and then correct them if necessary and then issue them out to us.
Are there any other positions that this committee believes that we need to consider?
Do you want to vote on the motion and second for?
I call the question to vote on Mr. Scaletti as that liaison position.
All in favor? Now, are there any other positions, functions that we need to consider? Committee, what would we call it? Have a chair, vice chair, liaison, staff. City manager, do you have any views on this?
Mr. Chairman, at the moment, I would recommend that that's a great place to start. And as you evolve, you may find a need for other positions, but right now, I think they're a good starting point.
Very good. Then we will move rapidly on to the next section of the agenda, administrative considerations. I think item B under that record keeping effective minute, we've already addressed that. Good shape. A, established meeting schedule. The materials that I received suggested somewhere, perhaps a monthly meeting would be a good place to start. But there could be other meetings more frequently as required.
Somewhere in this information, there's a date for submitting the report to the city council.
October.
October.
The first, October first, we have to be done with the direction that we're gonna provide, and then October 14th is gonna be presented to the city council.
Okay, so we know we have a target date for the commission.
Personally believe that that date is going to hold monthly meetings. Probably not be enough. More than another times given another month.
So Chairman, if I can recommend, you may want to come back to that particular question after you go through the information that's gonna be presented. That may give you some idea of how often you feel like. I would suggest not less than once a month.
Make the motion, we initially meet once a month until chair decides the committee addressment that the schedule needs to change.
But we certainly need to establish a date now for the next meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I recommend you do it on a regular interval, such as this is, for example, the first Monday of the month. I don't know if you want to keep it on the first Monday of the month, or if there's a date and time that looks better for the meeting.
This works good for me and also does not interfere with other meetings like Mr. Scalati, you have council meetings, I have week meetings on Wednesdays. That would work. The planning commission schedule.
The
Third Monday of the month.
third Monday.
First Monday, okay, so first Monday still works. County council, what do you guys?
We just about every Monday now, but I think the first Monday is my committee at 2 and natural resources at 3 or 4 o'clock. So I'm not on natural resources. It should work. I'm actually trying to pull up the calendar right now.
First Monday works for me.
Yeah, it's a good idea. I have a personal problem with respect to the very first Monday. I'm not going to be. But the last day of, or the last couple of days of June would be fine.
I will point out that electronic attendance of these meetings is also an option. And public members online.
Would anyone have a problem with establishing the next meeting? So I don't have a calendar in front of me. We go. Monday, June 30th. Joe, 7:30.
That would be difficult for me, but
Yeah,
when the alternates get help, you kind of regional.
start the day before that.
24th to the 5th is gonna be tough.
Just for clarification on the role of the alternates is to fill the seat, should the seat not be able to be filled. It's not to substitute on a per meeting basis, because there needs to be some continuity among the information that's presented and how it's processed and the recommendation we're making. Just want to throw that out.
Okay. David, would you be able to participate Monday the 30th by Zoom or otherwise?
It's going to be difficult. I'm not sure what kind of coverage I'm going to have.
The chair, when are you back? Or when you're able to
Well,
meet?
I will be,
We're talking about July.
yeah, July.
The July 1st Monday.
The first,
First Monday in July was July 7th.
I don't mind participating. I think it's going to be necessary through the summer. It's inevitable. We're going to have some participation. But I think we could have at least the next meeting with as many people as possible present.
July 7th does work for me as well. I don't think we have any county council meetings in July. So I'm
What
flexible.
if we move back earlier?
Last Monday. June 23rd will be 3 weeks out.
June 30. June 30, that's a month,
That's 4 weeks.
that's a month. 23rd is Monday.
No, the 23rd is a Monday, yes.
There's a regular county council meeting at 5 and 6 on the 23rd.
Early in the day.
Yes, yes, sir, again, I'll
I'm
have
flexible.
I can do 23rd.
I can attend electronically, I'll be out of town.
Other questions pending. What if we say June 23? I am flexible anytime during the day.
Guys, I'm not flexible for that on Mondays, but after 3 p.m. again, but 3 p.m. and on.
We made it 3, would that interfere with the council?
I think it'd be fine. It's caucus at 5, so I can just. There. As long as it's not down at Hilton Head or something. I don't know where it's going to be.
Why don't we establish then, the next meeting to be on Monday, June 23 at 3 p.m.
And then what are your intervals?
After that, we could make it, monthly after that. Triggered from that date, the 23rd. Mondays.
So then your next meeting after that would be the first Monday in August,
Correct.
August 4th.
Right, pretty big jump, but we could always call an audible and some point.
Be July 21st.
Well,
Well, you were talking about sticking with the first Monday.
yeah, was our thought after that, stick up the first Monday?
Look, you're gonna have to stick with something. What I've learned valuable lesson all the years is that you can't herd 6, 7 chickens into the same coop every time the same way. So basically, set a date, try to meet it. You volunteer to be here, let's see if you can meet the date. If you get here, you can. If you miss it, that's why we have 7 people, so we can cover it. And I guess we'll talk in executive session, maybe about some other stuff that relates to that.
All right, so you're suggesting that maybe we make it, start June 23 on Monday and then
Shift to the first
shift from there to the first.
Monday of each month.
All right, that would be August 4.
At 5 p.m.
All right. That okay? On the table? What would be the next meeting?
September 1st.
And Mr. Scalati, you're gonna have to make sure these notes and gifts, so I send out the notice.
We won't let it fall through.
Maybe we don't need to go any further than that.
Let's, does your staff send out a calendar invite? Before,
All right, I mean,
I go where it tells me to go.
Same.
Yeah.
so what would be after? Well, September 1 would be what would be the next.
We would have to provide our report by October 1st, so October 6th is the first Monday in October.
13th is the final, right?
That's when
That's when it goes-
the presentation to city
that's-
council.
I would maintain that you could provide an interim update that may satisfy some of that, or that part may be flexible. That would be between you and your other members of council.
Let's review these dates, overall here. The next meeting will be June 23, 3 p.m. After that, August 4, 5 p.m. After that, September 1 at 5 p.m. After that, October 6th.
No issues with me, but September 1st would be Labor Day.
Well, we had it.
think that interferes with anything, my schedule, but
Why don't we move it a little bit later than that?
County council meet on the eighth.
August eighth.
That'd be
September.
September.
second Monday in September, September 8th.
59.
Let's say August fourth. There's community services committee, but the eighth, that's.
September.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the eighth. I'm okay with Labor Day too, but no, eighth is not.
Well, why don't we make it the eighth? Right,
Actually, I'm sorry, so September eighth, there is a meeting in August, 6 p.m. county council regular session. Sorry.
See?
All right, in other tomorrow.
And then, Mr. Suter will also be at a county.
so where are we with respect to the eighth?
You got two members that can't make it.
One actually can't make it, the other will be traveling, but out of the country,
Why don't you just leave it to Labor Day unless, I mean, I can't speak for all y'all, but Labor Day is a day I can make. It's on Monday, it's after the weekend, so it's not like I'm traveling, other people maybe. Mr. Scaletti, you don't have a problem Monday, right?
Labor Day works for me.
let's leave it 9/1.
If we feel we need to change it, we get closer, we can talk about
Right,
it.
if you miss a meeting, look, we have, I'm sure we're gonna be in communication, and we'll talk about, I hope we talk about communication, because typically I don't work outside committee meetings, meaning I don't communicate and do emails and discuss business outside the preview that I'm in. So hopefully we'll have a discussion about what the rules of engagement are for this committee. So what I would hate to see happen is that, you know, we end up with committees that are run off doing business and there's no one aware that it's happening. Without the chair understanding that.
All right, well, I think that's about as much schedule as we can do right now. But there may well be need for other meetings in the interim, which working sessions we can call as needed. They may be by Zoom or otherwise. Just, this is a detail, but I think it would be good for the committee to have a list of names, email addresses, phone numbers.
We'll look at that too.
She's around to sign it. Working.
Would you like us to sign in now, or you'll, staff has that information?
No, we have it.
Okay, so you send that out.
Yeah, we can cross.
Okay.
Sure.
Next section of the agenda is roles, responsibilities, and issues overview. Presentation by Mr. Soleil. Please.
You all should have copies of this presentation in your packet, as well as a copy of the existing marina lease with State Harbor and the resolution that provided directly from city council to this committee. And I'm not gonna hit every single thing in this presentation. Would ask that we hold questions, if at all possible, to the end, because we're gonna have an executive session. There is currently a pending legal action that revolves around the marina waterfront park. And the city attorney is gonna discuss that with all of you. And then there is also the potential, part of the directives to negotiate and look at the contractual arrangement with Safe Harbor. So Ben's gonna speak to you all about that. And once we come out of executive session, at this meeting or future meetings, we can talk about how we want to potentially store public documents to make them readily available to this committee as well as the public. But I wanted you to have an opportunity to speak to the city attorney, executive session, about these matters, make that decision. Good control. I can try. All right, next slide. So the waterfront park is so important to the city because it is a community hub. And the purpose, overall purpose of this committee is to provide strategic oversight, recognizing that importance and guiding initiatives and priorities moving forward. Next. So the background and rationale for the creation of this committee. Back in the summer of last year, we received a report from McSweeney Engineers, their annual 5-year report that they normally do, that indicated that there were some serious concerns coming up with the waterfront park. In response to that, in July of 2024, we issued a request for qualifications for consulting services to a full engineering assessment of that leaving platform. Talk a little bit more about that moving forward. Also, during the community engagement portions of this process, and honestly, before we ever even issued the RFQ, we recognize the need for citizen input and involvement in this process. City leadership's response after several meetings discussing it was to establish this committee. So it's a broad range of things that the city council's asking to look into, but that's kind of the timeline of how we got here. So the committee formation process in January 2025, we opened the applications process. You all applied for that. February, March, we held the interviews and the reviews of those applications. And then in April of 2025, City Council made the final appointments to this board committee. Committee composition, we have our 3 full-time residents of Beaufort who provide a local perspective and community insights to the committee. We have a representative from County Council. We have 1 representative from City Council. We have a representative from the Historic District Review Board and a representative from the Planning Commission. Council felt that this was representative of the major stakeholder groups that would be involved in this process. Now, that doesn't mean that you won't need to reach out to other members of the public, whether it's downtown business owners, people who utilize the park, you work with city staff, our engineers. You also have the city manager and the city attorney as de facto members. They're non-voting members to help coordinate all of that work that will need to be done with city staff. The purpose and responsibilities as identified in the original resolution was to provide a strategic advisory role to City Council on pivotal decisions impacting our waterfront park, and to serve as a think tank focused exclusively on the park's needs and opportunities. We want to focus on sustainability and determining a long-term future for the park that is both financially responsible, environmentally sustainable. You're going to engage in information gathering. We'll collect and analyze data from the engineers and the public throughout this process. And you'll serve as community liaisons for this project, helping to keep the public updated, maintaining open channels of communication with citizens, businesses, and city government regarding any park-related matters. So the strategic importance of this project is it's the waterfront park and the marina are essential to our community well-being. They've been a part of the city since the 1970s. A lot of people view it as the heart of the low country, the heart of Beaufort. It provides a huge economic impact, which is essential to not just the city, but also our businesses and many homes here in Beaufort. And it's a major part of our cultural identity. When people think of visiting Beaufort, they think of Waterfront Park. It represents more than just a public space. It's a cornerstone of our identity, our economy. According to some surveys, we average this out, local businesses report up to 40% increases in revenue during park events, while property values near the waterfront have appreciated at a significantly higher average over the past decade. The park's signature events draw thousands of visitors annually, generate substantial hospitality tax revenue that benefits the entire community. Your guidance on this is going to be essential to maintaining the economic future of the city. That's kind of what happened and how we got here. Next part is on the infrastructure assessment and history of the park itself. So 1974 was the design of the relieving platform and seawall. 2003 to 2019, multiple inspections began to note deterioration. We noted that at the time when the project was started, the estimated life cycle of the relieving platform was only 70 to 75 years. In 2023, we did have the cruise ship incident, which raised some safety concerns, which was where the cruise ship was got pulled away. 2024, we had the McSweeney engineer assessment that identified that there were continuing issues. Between 2003 and 2019, there was work done to address issues. There was wrapping of the piles that were exposed and were damaged. But those piles, they're unable to inspect them moving forward because of that wrap. These reports are all available on the city's website on their capital projects. If you go to the Waterfront Park Engineering section of that, all of those reports and documents are publicly available to be downloaded as PDFs. Then in 2025, we started this process and we continued the legal discussions and federal covenant clarifications. During this process, we realized that there were some discrepancies between the original documents from when the waterfront park was first created and the current documents that identify the area of the waterfront park. Those relate to the National Park Service and a federal grant that were used to build the park back in the 1970s. And so we've been working with the National Park Service and the state of South Carolina to determine what those discrepancies mean. And Ben will talk to you more about that in executive session. So the structural assessment findings found that 570 piles were inspected with extensive spalling and deterioration on some. Multiple past repairs are bearing success, and there's a lot of shoaling and inaccessible pile sections, which complicates the assessment process. So late last year, we entered into a contract for services with McSweeney and about 15 different partner organizations. They're using Davis and Floyd, one of those, to begin a phased approach to addressing this. The first thing we realized we needed to do is have a full understanding of what is there now and what the state of it is. And then from there, we can identify what our options are moving forward. So right now, the phase 1A engineering work is underway. It's a complete as-built survey, utility locations, geotechnical analysis, and environmental reviews. And all that has been ongoing, and they hope to present that to this committee and staff by late summer. Once phase 1A is completed, there will be phase 1B, which is modeling final data. Phase 2 will be design alternatives. So what are our options moving forward? Once an option is selected, we know that's going to be the funding and the permitting. Final design is going to be a pretty extensive period. So that's been broken down to its own phase, and then there would be construction of whatever option is identified. So the Safe Harbor Marina Management Agreement was entered into in 2019. It is a lease agreement for marina management. They manage our public dockage, city position. It's always been that this is still a public facility, still open to the general public, but for a price, even if the city were to take on management of the marina ourselves, there would still be costs associated with usage. And it hosts many different expedition companies and community events. Just a general overview of the federal land use restrictions. 1976 was a project management agreement that involved federal outdoor recreation covenants. The city's position is that the marina predates project management agreement covenant. The marina was in existence before this project, and it was a private marina at that point. And Ben will talk to you more about this. There's survey evidence. We believe that the marina is outside of the Bureau of Recreation boundary for the purposes of the management agreement. And we have been working with the National Park Service on confirming that the restricted covenants that apply to Waterfront Park do not apply to the marina property itself. One of the things they look at, this will become an important conversation as you move forward, looking at the marina agreement, any future agreement. If the National Park Service covenants were to apply to the marina, is rate comparison to other public marinas, membership, public activities, and compliance. The Safe Harbor rate comparison right now, it is comparable or lower, comparable or lower to similar marinas along the South Carolina and Georgia coast. There is no Safe Harbor membership required for slip rental. There are kayaking community events and boat access. They're open to the public, and then we're again going through all of this and ongoing efforts to meet federal expectations. Where we are on that right now is we've submitted our response to the National Park Service and their legal teams for getting back to us. So your committee tasks ahead in broad strokes are going to be to review the engineering options. We're going to be working directly with the city's capital improvements team and the engineers in that process. Assessing repair versus replacement alternatives. We don't really know what those alternatives are going to look like right now. Public access policies, going to ensure continued community use of waterfront. I want this to be as small a disruption to the waterfront as possible, but again, until we know what our options are, we'll have to plan for everything. Land use considerations, evaluating programming changes as needed. This is primarily for the marina portion. And then recommended solutions. So working with the council to provide actionable guidance. How can we reach a solution here? Continued monitoring the engineering process. So track phase 1A completion milestone. Again, we plan to have that done by late summer. The National Park Service confirmation, we're awaiting determination. That would guide your conversations moving forward, whatever that determination from it is. Convening work sessions, which you all just discussed, and developing those recommendations with a target for October 1st for a final initial advisory advisory report. I know that sounds weird, final initial advisory report. We recognize that you're not gonna have all the information you need by October first. But we wanted to build some check-ins as the process goes to make sure we're all making progress, to make sure the public knows where we are on things, make sure that council and the committee are coordinating and communicating effectively. And so we recognize that that'll be an initial report. You may not be able to answer all the questions that we're going to go over in that report, but we at least want to check in with council and staff and let them know where we are at that point. Regular meetings, you guys just addressed that. One of the things that you were tasked with was stakeholder engagement. So at some point during this process, you'll be working with city staff to get information out to those various stakeholders to start getting additional input, especially when we start getting more information about what our options are moving forward. She wasn't introduced to you all here. If anyone doesn't know her, back here in the corner is Ashley Brandon. She is our public information officer, communications director for the city. And that's one of the reasons she's here. She'll be a big part of that, working with you to get that information out so that we're engaging with stakeholders appropriately. And then comprehensive planning, developing an integrated enhancement plan that addresses the infrastructure needs, programming opportunities, and a sustainable funding mechanism for the park's ongoing maintenance. You'll notice I haven't talked about funding much yet because we have no idea. We know it's going to be a lot, but we've got a lot more information we've got to gather before we can get to a ballpark there. The final section before we go into executive session is the council directives reporting line. You're going to review the 2024 findings. Again, those are available online. We'll work with you all. We can create a SharePoint site or a OneDrive site where people have access to members of the committee, or we can do a public portal where everyone has access to the documents that are public record. You'll be exploring design options and establishing evaluation criteria. Regarding the marina operations, you're going to be assessing the lease agreement, assessing the public benefit enhancement. So what are opportunities to increase recreational access to the marina as well as Waterfront Park as a whole? And then making policy recommendations to council to balance the commercial viability with community interest for the marina area. And again, a lot of that's going to depend on what comes back from the National Park Service as far as whether the marina is they believe the marina is a part of the Waterfront Park as identified in the 1976 management plan. Assessing public access opportunities, the recreational access, inclusive design, partnership development, not just for the recreational providers and community organizations, but when we start working towards a plan, you've made recommendations and councils giving staff a directive want to go with addressing all of this, building strategic partners that can assist us for funding, fundraising, lobbying. That'll be a big portion of the conversation down the road. And then programming enhancement. I want to focus on creating year-round activities that attract diverse visitors. A lot of that really just has to do with maintaining the design or the use that we currently have for the Waterfront Park, and then assessing the use of the marina. Community and stakeholder engagement. The committee will be identifying key stakeholders such as local businesses, residents, visitors, and agencies that should be involved in the process. You'll be gathering input. We'll assist with conducting surveys, holding forums, or conducting interviews. Then analyzing the feedback that will come from all of that input and incorporating those findings into your recommendations to City Council. Some of the participation enhancement methods that we have found to be best practices in the public realm, digital engagement, in-person participation, and inclusive outreach. So we want to have a combination of events. We recognize some people are only going to do an online survey. Some people are only going to want to come and speak at a public event. Some people may only want to come to informal events like the coffee with the manager events that we have. So we want to be inclusive with our outreach and make sure that we're getting input from as many different formats as possible. And again, staff will help you all with all of that. Developing evaluation criteria. So how are we going to assess the financial considerations? What recommendations do we need to make to council about that? The life cycle analysis. Is there an option that, you know, is good for 100 years versus another 70-year option? Is there an option that's good for a longer period of time? Risk mitigation, making sure that we're building or putting something back or repairing the waterfront park in a way that is resilient, that provides structural integrity and public safety in the long-term future. And then the big unknown is the regulatory compliance. What, even if we figure out what we want to do, what are the state and federal regulatory agencies going to allow us to do out there? The reporting timeline and next steps, we'll have the ongoing coordination. You guys just set some of your regular meeting staff in the city manager's office. If you feel like there's interim findings between now and the October first deadline, you're welcome to report those back to council. We have work sessions each month that those can be brought up at. The final report submission, the October 1st, and then we plan to discuss that in the council work session on October 14th. And again, we all recognize and council recognizes you're not going to answer every question by October 1st, but we wanted to create some regular check-ins throughout this process. And you may, as part of your report back on October 1st, make some recommendations to council on when you think the check-ins should be. Is that quarterly? Is it monthly? Is it biannually? Whatever input y'all have at that point in time. So in conclusion, we want to focus this process on proactive planning, collaborative approach. There's going to be a lot of people involved in this process, from the public to the regulatory bodies, to the engineers, to the staff, this committee, business owners. This park and marina touch a lot of people in the country. And then we want to make sure that we preserve the lasting legacy that is the waterfront park here in Beaufort. So I would ask that you hold any questions related to the litigation or the contract negotiations themselves for the city attorney. And again, we'll discuss some of that moving forward in public where the city attorney feels it's appropriate. But for this initial briefing, like we will speak with you in that private setting before we start talking about things publicly. But any questions about process, what got us here, how the staff can help you with this process, big picture concerns you may have. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I've got a concern about how this committee's schedule is going to sync up with the engineering recommendations.
Yes, sir.
For example, I would think that before we submit any recommendations in October, we wanted to see the design alternatives that the engineers come up with, but I'm not sure when those are likely to appear.
You most likely won't have those yet, and that's again part of my recommendation to this committee moving forward as we bring the engineers in and they start to talk to you about where they are in the process. Maybe working to schedule those check-ins so that that's working concurrently.
Do we have a lump sum contract with these engineers?
We have, it's broken down.
I mean, we should, if we have a lump sum contract, we should be able to nail them down on delivery dates for their material. Phase 1, 1B, phase 2, et cetera. So we should know and target those, tell them what our target dates are.
So the only part that we have paid for at this point is the 1A.
1A.
That's through. We
But
want.
we don't have a completion date for 1A. You say sometime in August.
Yes.
The 31st of August, the 8th of August.
We had just agreed to the late summer initially because we were trying to get all these moving parts organized. And we didn't want them to rush through that first part.
Don't want them to rush, but they should be able to tell us that, give us a date,
Yep.
or we agree on a date.
Yes, sir. So their concern when we first entered into the contract was getting into and underneath and seeing what all they had because so much of the, so many of the piles were inaccessible and they weren't sure what permitting was going to allow them to do. Now that this committee has been stood up, I would recommend that we bring the engineers into your very next meeting to start finalizing some of those details like timelines and what the expectations going into the phase 1B would be. Again, we had a lot of moving parts, and for some background for anyone who's not familiar with the city's capital improvements process, up until July, August of last year, the city did not have a full-time employee dedicated to capital projects. We had a support assistant who did a lot of other things, primarily as a grant manager. That role was handled by a contracted employee that worked part-time. Last year, we spent a lot of the year as far as capital improvements goes, building out our national capital improvements program internally. And this came up right in the middle of all of that. So the staff, from staff standpoint, we worked with our advisors on getting the initial RFQ out and finding engineers that we work with that have experience dealing with these types of things. And then the details of how the timeline would come together, we knew we were going to be doing this citizens committee, and council wanted the citizens committee to guide all of that process. We really wanted to leave as much to the committee as possible to develop the timelines and the recommendations. So there was a lot of concern that staff were driving the process based on grant funding and financials. We wanted to avoid the image of that. It's as transparent a process as possible, just for some background of how we got here.
Mr. Suter, a lot of the work that this engineering team is doing right now is weather dependent, it's tide dependent. It's dependent on a lot of conditions that are out of the control of the engineers. So a little tougher to nail down an exact, date on it, but they've given a good approximate date. And that would be a great question to raise with them. What parts of the
Back in
process have
business, we
you,
would say that this is not their first rodeo either.
well, there are not many rodeos like this one.
Okay.
But
Sweeney's
the firm's doing it, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
All right,
they're
so
gonna be.
Sweeney's the firm who did the engineering studies at the first renovation.
Right.
And fully aware of what's going on. I think they could brief you on the conditions without further study. And if you ask yourself, is there a problem with the park? I think you can know the answer, right?
Not gonna argue.
Nobody's gonna argue that, so
That's why we're here.
I know. So is there any engineers in the room?
I am.
You're an
That's
engineer?
why I'm asking.
Okay, so if I hire you as an engineer, if I tell you what I want, am I gonna get what I want, or am I gonna get what you recommend?
I would give you what I recommend.
Okay. So we're gonna expect engineers are gonna come up with a plan to make a repair on that park, right?
Yeah.
My concern is, well, first of all, there's plenty to work on with respect to the marina, not to start right now, but I'm a little concerned that council's and the public's expectations might be a little more than we can meet with respect to the waterfront park issues.
We have 100 days or less.
So in your package, you have the actual resolution that was passed by council with the specific language. You're going to throw them down on two intersections. The final request is to recommend criteria for evaluating your basic cost life cycle, risk mitigation, preventive impacts. I think that's where we're really going to, with this committee working with the engineers, be able to start to hammer out more of a finite timeline moving forward. The second part, the marine operations and public access, we're hoping to have response back from the National Park Service regarding land and water conservation fund obligations. Here, I mean, we've sent it off. It's been a month now, I believe. But there's,
You said month?
I believe it's been over a month that we've had that out to them. Ben, can you give the exact date? She's the one that's been leading that communication. But I think there's plenty for the committee to begin on was assessing the marine operation and public access and assessing the existing. The community and stakeholder engagement, I said, if you want to dedicate a portion of your next meeting towards working with Ashley about a potential schedule, the types of events she would like to see, the types of communication, she can begin working through a communications plan for these. Mr. Sutter, the engineering perspective, staff has been working to adopt PMBOK guides for project management. So staff's learning how to do communication plan, project management plans. And, so I would like to see that applied to this process here. And then reporting requirements. And I think between those three things, I think the committee's probably going to have its hands pretty full getting us there and providing what you feel is an acceptable timeline starting on that October 1st day, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with Joe. I mean, you know, being in the expectation management business, I mean, a lot of the pyramid timeline you have starts with the engineering report and the engineering, it goes from there from a recommendation standpoint. So as everything does slip, you know, this goes into September and you get the report,
Yeah.
you know, as long as council's gonna be, understand that that may be a peg we don't have.
Yeah, I believe they do. Josh, what's your perspective from the?
No, I believe that's absolutely right. So I mean, we do have some things here that we can discuss moving forward, but council has a pretty good understanding that we may not have all of the information that we need to give a definite direction by October, but that's at least to provide an update on where we're at, some of the things that we discussed and what the plan is based on the information that we have.
Has the engineering firm been tasked to develop more than one plan or just a repair plan, or is it just an assessment at this phase?
At this point, it's just an assessment because they didn't feel comfortable making repair or replacement options until they have done a full assessment. So we have asked them in the RFQ language, it was to provide a span of options ranging from repair to replacement. They may come to us at the end of this and say, guys, it's all gotta go. I don't know what that may be, but we've left it pretty broad so that this committee can work with the engineers and focus the scope as it goes.
Well, Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we have staff bring the engineer into the next meeting to give us a brief of where they stand.
Absolutely.
Good idea. Second. Second, any discussion?
I would like to see a cross-section of the existing condition, not the entire park, but I'm talking about a 20-foot, 10-foot. Because a lot of people think that whole thing's floating on water.
Would that be normally part of their? If they got that
I
already?
believe so, yeah, it's a pretty detailed, those documents, that's what I was trying to pull up.
Are they
Even the
aligned?
studies that we just
They
got
are.
the last time from them went into pretty good detail about how the park was built and then some of the conditions of, I mean, it even tells you in there, they had the ability to access 227 of the pilings and 343 of them they couldn't because you had that much mud built up underneath there. So you can identify some of the problems that they've had to navigate. There's a lot of information in there. So even if they haven't made too much progress in their current assessment, but came and discussed the presentation, you know, more or less that we got from the last study, I think it would be helpful.
Sure, I think Sweeney can tell you pretty much what's going on, they just want to quantify their data by continuing to investigate, so.
Have they ever showed any original construction documents?
We have been tracking down original construction documents, Lockwood Green out of Spartanburg, which I think we talked about it. My dad actually retired from Lockwood Green and knew some of the engineers on it.
Yeah.
Did the work, we have found some of that, some of it we have been unable to locate. Steve Andrews has been a wonderful resource on this. One of the subs on this project is Davis and Floyd, so we have that whole team involved as well. The full scope of the phase 1A assessment is available in the public air table, as well as all of the past reports. If there is any specific document that this committee would like to see, or any members of this committee would like to see, Scott, how do you want them to communicate with city staff through?
They would communicate directly through me and I'll delegate it. Yeah.
Feel free to let Scott know if there are specific documents that you don't see or have questions about. And we'll work on getting those all compiled into a single location for everyone to access.
So a representative from next meeting will be here on the 23rd.
I think on the lease agreement, we have the lease, what we probably need or I'd like to have is some historical data on the city's management of the marina and the Rick Griffith financials that related to the discussion of how Safe Harbor got the lease to begin with. That's something you should have in the city.
Keyword
Should have in the city there. Everybody understands the marina was managed by a private enterprise for many years. And the reason that Safe Harbor came into play was because that manager retired and his family decided not to stay in the marina business. So there's a long history of relationship between the city of Beaufort and a private management of that marina. Being a public-private marina, there's a lot of things that some misinformation has been put out in the press over the years about Safe Harbor being there. So I think it'd be good to have that data on what was the city doing prior to Safe Harbor and how that, what the impact was economically.
I know we have some of that information. I just don't know how detailed it is. But we'll work on getting that.
We'll get it.
Information as well.
And I'm sure council did a previous on this, but there's also a question whether the lease is, invalid at this point because of the public hearing issues or not, or kind of us understanding what kind of bite at the apple we have with this lease is going to be helpful.
That's going to be the majority of the
I'd
conversation.
like to suggest that all discussion concerning this marina be reserved for executive session.
That's fine. The next line is just executive session, so you're good now. So if there's no questions.
Jeremy, you do have members of the public here and online. I don't know if you want to invite any comment from them as town MD.
Before we go to executive session, do any members here, any members of the public here or online wish to make any comments?
Yeah, he has it.
I would make a motion though, before we get to executive session, that we adapt the rules of order and for this committee, as in Robert's rules, so that we understand the process. You understand what I'm asking?
Yeah, I understand what you're asking. So we will need a rule of, what's the quorum?
Right, we need to understand what represents the ability to actually meet and how to make a decision, what votes. So if we run with Robert's rules, we accept that as our process, and I think all of your committees still do that now, right?
They do, and I guess the recommendation would be to follow what all the other council appointed committees follow, which basically standard rules and operating procedures have been adopted for county government for us, city council. You follow those, we'll be right in line.
So do you have a name other than Robert's rules that you coined for that?
City council, committees. It's the policies. SOB.
We can provide a copy of that and put it in.
basically adopt Robert's Rules of Order, except for some sections that have to do with public meetings. Primarily like secret voting, things like that.
That's small board consideration for anything or distinction.
We're still in the process of updating, it was updated for council last year. And then we're gonna be meeting with individual boards to address any sort of specific thing that we changed.
I think that concludes the non-executive session portion of the agenda.
Make a motion, we move to executive session.
Second. Okay.